Hey guys, Thomas the Silly Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here to review the movie The Young Cannibals. So, we start this movie off in the Alps of some winter location, as we see these three men who are eating the human of flesh, and two of them are cannibalizing, and one of the other guys is like, oh, I want nothing to do with that. And we see that two of them are grabbed, and one of them is killed, at least, I think. And the other two fuck off as they see something in the distance, and, yeah. So, with that intro, we cut to a young girl named Natalia and her boyfriend Ethan. And she is currently in this sort of hospital. She's like, I guess later on it suggests that she tried to commit suicide, and then, she was like brought into this place to like help her out or whatever. So it's her birthday on this day, so Ethan plans to get her out to see her friends. So they do that successfully. They get out, they get the car, and they get out. And they start traveling, and we cut to our other group who are waiting for them. We have Pepper, who is this self-indulgent, lazy lady. We have Mike, the fat guy, but unfortunately that is my only descriptor of the character. We have Teddy, who is the boyfriend of Pepper, I believe, and then Cam is just this guy with the hat. And Ethan and Natalia join them, or I'll just call her Nate, as I did in my review. I cut her name down to just Nate. So again, Pepper and Nate are talking with each other, and we also have this other lady, I almost forgot her in my notes, Frances, this girl with the glasses. So Nate's a little bit upset, but, you know, she's having that time to herself, so she has time to reflect on things. Nonetheless, we see that Pepper has like these forms for them to do something. I'm not really sure. That bit was a little bit obscure of like what they were trying to accomplish here, but nonetheless, Ethan ends up going with Nate to this house where they need to bring these papers for whatever reason, and they bring it to this old man named Blackwood, I think his name was. I think I heard that correctly, but I could be mistaken easily. Nonetheless, we see that Teddy checks in with Natalia, and Teddy is, by the way, her brother. We cut to, I believe it was, out of the five, we see Mike and Cam start to make their way to get some burgers, and they get it from the old guy, and they're offering it to this other older guy, but he doesn't want anything to do with it. So they proceed to bring the burgers to the rest of the group, and Mike does not partake, Mike being the fat guy. He's a vegan, which I don't know how that works. I thought that, you know, eating meat would put on the weight, but I guess he like gave it up, and then like he was already in that big, I guess, I don't know. Anyway, we cut to the nighttime though, and Ethan is like talking with Nate about her friend. And thus Nate feels the need to, say her apologies to all of her friends. But the old gray man from the beginning, Blackwood, comes out and tells them all to tie themselves up or he'll shoot them. And they do so. So he speaks of this monster who followed him in the woods. This is, of course, referring to the creature we assume he saw at the beginning of the movie. So, he feed the meat we saw them eat the burgers. He explains that it was made from human meat, so he had made them cannibals. So he outright explains that this monster is a hunter of cannibals, and he made them cannibals so that the monster would go after them first. But the old man, Blackwood, forces Mike to eat, and he doesn't. So Mike is the first one killed. He is shot right in the head. So he takes out this blood packet for whatever reason, and he spills himself with it. Actually, they do explain this later on, but for now, we'll just keep that as it is. So he takes the others in this vehicle, and they try to get out by using a lighter, but the car does eventually stop. So they are able to get out and look around, and the keys are gone to the car. And sadly, none of them, I guess, know how to hotwire a car, so they're stuck there in the woods. But if you were a smart person, which I would hope they would have been, but, you gotta have a movie, but they should have gone the other way, the way that the car was facing, which was the opposite way of where they went. So yeah. So they head deeper into the woods, obviously, instead of heading out easily. So they're trying to figure out what to do. So they start to move, and then Ethan is trying to move ahead a lot, trying to be like the leader of the group, I suppose. But Teddy, as they are leaving the van, he wants to go back to the van, so everyone gets on Teddy's case, or Ted, I'll just call him Ted, because it's what they eventually just end up calling him. Ted actually had the smartest idea out of everyone. They should have went back to the van, and indeed went back to the other direction. So everyone was mad that Ted had the right idea, which is, I find funny, but whatever. So, anyways, Nate ends up, going ahead to talk to Ted. And Ted looks out, and we see the vision of the monster, which is like this sort of grayscale sort of vision. And he's looking right in the direction, sort of like a predator kind of thing going on here. And then Nate jump scares him. So she joins up, and Ethan eventually catches up. But now Pepper is falling behind, so they go back to get Pepper, and she's trying to rest. And then in the process, I believe it was Francesca, or Francis I should say, that finds this little castle alcove that they can hide in. So, Ted keeps watch while we have a nice long scene of him looking out, hearing where the monster is, but not seeing it fully. We have Francis spook him again, but then head back. And she's hearing noises from the other direction where he's facing. But Ted is starting to get tired, so he heads further out, a bit silly, y'all. But not too far ridiculously out. And he hears more noises, so he's rushing back to the door, and he lights up a smoke as he joins the others. So, I believe it was Francis or Nate, one of those two, that saw the creature first in the inside, so the creature found a way around them, essentially. And then they end up splitting up. And in the process of splitting up, Ted re-bumps into Nate. Francis falls down, injuring her leg. And Ethan and Pepper are trying to get to her. So they pick her up and then try to pull her away, and then Ted like runs off after getting there already. So Ethan is like trying to procure again the leadership role, telling Pepper and Nate to go on ahead, and as I mentioned, Ted runs off. So Ethan is trying his best to pull Frances along, but then she vanishes from out of sight. So he starts running, and then he catches up with Pepper and Nate. They make their way to this other building or castle. I think they looped back around. It was a little bit hard to tell what they did in terms of movement, but I don't think that's the most important thing here. Anyways, Ethan, Pepper, and Nate move on, so it's now the three of them, and they move towards this campsite where they see this other older gray man, and I'm assuming this is the other guy that was in the intro, the one that didn't eat the meat, but now he's there with them. So at first he wants the three of them just gone, out of sight, out of mind, that sort of mentality. But the three of them don't back down, especially Nate, who keeps asking for help, even after the point of gunpoint, and then he, like, has the four of them sit out looking at each direction. And while they start to see the creature move in on them nice and slow, like the old man cannot see them, the creature I should say. So Ethan is now grabbed and ripped apart by the stomach. And of course this is causing Nate to like scream out to shoot at the creature, but he can't see it, so he just shoots randomly, and then we see the creature flee. And then we see Ted come out of nowhere with the gun, so the old man like moves somewhere, and then Ted picks up the gun and shoots at the creature once. Ted, Nate, and Pepper flee from the scene. They flee away from the old man, and then Ted leads them in this crawling lake section. Pepper loses one of her shoes in the process, and she like grabs it real quick, managing to get it in time. But Ted takes out the flashlight and then runs off in another direction, like beckoning the creature to follow him. It does so, and then it's just down to Pepper and Nate, and they're arguing over what to do. So this is an interesting, set of circumstances, because at first we see a character like Pepper. She's a very annoying character, very lazy, very, even to the point of like where things are getting drastic, was just like, she ends up surviving the longest alongside Nate. Obviously Nate was the main character, and they end up bringing back the suicide thing very briefly there. So we cut back to Ted, who's looking around for the monster, hears some noises, trying to fight over the light, and then getting grabbed, finally. So we see Nate and Pepper walk, and they hear a noise, and Nate pulls out a flare from the bag she took. So the old man had a bag, she took it, it had a flare in it. And they find various other skulls, and they find a bloodied up Frances. So Nate uses, I believe it was her boyfriend's blood, to cover herself, because she thinks back to when the old man did it, the covering himself in the blood, and she says that it will like make the creature think you're dead or whatever. So that is her process of thinking. But Pepper wants nothing to do with that. And guess who gets chopped off next? Pepper gets grabbed and killed right in front of Nate. So Nate runs off, and in the process of running, she falls over, and she plays dead as soon as she falls. And the creature's like far away, but it's like moving in, and then it does that close-up check, but then sniffs and then moves away because it actually does think that she is dead. So she starts limping away, and then she sees this flashlight and then finds Ted, who's all bloodied up as well. So she's crying, obviously, because her brother is like dying, and then he's like begging for a mercy killing, and she does so. So she takes his light and heads out, and ends up on a street road and follows it for a bit. And she makes her way back to their camp where they had set up, and grabs her key to their car, gets in, and is like, for whatever reason, opening the gift that she was gotten, because it was her birthday, as I mentioned earlier. But the car don't want to start right now. And she kind of forgot at this point in time that her boyfriend did that trick with the car where you push in something. I am very sorry that I don't know enough about cars to know what he did. He pushed in something and it made it work. That's all I can say. So there. That's my knowledge of cars for you. The two... Sorry, I lost my place in my notes here for a second. Yeah, so she makes her way to the house where the old man came from. She's looking around. She makes her way like downstairs, seeing his little operation room, if you want to call it that. Makes her way back out, sees the old man is like upstairs, and then she like stabs her, and they start to fight. But the monster is making its way towards them, so it grabs the old man. So she flees from the monster. She like gets to the car and then does the trick that she now remembers all of a sudden, and then starts to drive off. And the creature's like right there behind her, but she like drives off. But she wants this done with, so she turns the car around and waits for the creature to get into view, and she drives into it. This doesn't kill the creature, it does wound it a bit, and it gets into the car after the fact, and it's like trying to attack her, and then like she manages to slip out of the other side of the window, on the other side of the car, and then she takes her lighter, puts it in where you put the gas in, and that causes the car to blow up, with the creature still inside. So, we see Nate make her way back to the hospital in which she was put into, and we see her wanting to check herself back into said hospital, and that was the young cannibals. And, yeah, there was that little awkward moment of, like, I thought they were going to take this in a more comical route with the whole them making of the burgers, and, like, because it was shot in a very, like, haha, we're doing the fun stuff. But no, they lean it back in, and it's a pretty typical horror movie, with characters that are arguing with each other. Splitting up, doing the silly things, but, I would say it averages out. I would say it's not, I wouldn't say that makes it bad, just a bit cliched, and again, I'll always argue that a cliche is never inherently bad, because at this point everything has become a cliche. It's whether or not the cliche is executed well or not, and I think it was executed well enough for the premise of this movie. And it does bring in a pretty interesting dynamic, at least with the villain, and I am going to put that in quotes because he does explain later on when the two of them meet, being out in the snow, being desperate, what do you do in order to survive? And he and this other guy again turned to cannibalism. They were that desperate. This is an antagonist his entire gimmick is that he wants to survive. I really, really like that. I think that's a very strong villain motivation. He doesn't seem like a villain at all, because everyone inherently wants to survive, and yeah, he did a shitty thing in roping in all these younger people into his mess. That's what makes him the antagonist, the villain, is that he's willing to go to that extreme to, avoid death. And you have Nate on the opposing side of that, our heroine of the movie, who is willing to go out of her way after, her friends have been killed one by one, to finally confront the creature instead of fleeing from it and, finding a way to take it out for good. So, very interesting in terms of setting up your antagonist in in an interesting way. So, I actually pretty enjoyed this movie. Cliches and all, I'd give it a 6 out of 10 though. I think you could have tightened up some of the banter between the characters, I do feel like. A few surprises here and there, but, just tighten it up a bit, and you have yourself a solid, and I would lean this closer to even 7 out of 10. I would dare say it, yes. So I did enjoy this movie, so that is my review of The Young Cannibals. And if you enjoyed this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One to add over to my Discord server, the other to my Patreon page. Any donations are greatly appreciated. Until next time, everyone, bye-bye!